Hello. Whoa. Hi, everyone. I'm Pedro Ramos. I'm the head of e-commerce for Havas Media. I have to say this, if you want a better experience and not hear the noise around you, you have the headphones on your chairs. You can use them or not, if is how you want it. So, glad to be here. I have with me today David from Search Laboratories. David, I will let you introduce and give a bit of background.
Hi everyone, I'm a data solutions architect at Search Laboratory, which essentially means that I'm used to dealing with understanding business objectives, data infrastructure, and the pain points that you usually get around business objectives that we can solve with data.
Cool. And obviously, we are in a stage that is called post-purchase. And it's important to sometimes go a little bit back. Okay, so what happens with the data before and how can we as media agencies can use that data? And the reality is that there is no one size fits all. So how can the businesses start this journey of the data and then to use it?
Absolutely. So, I mean, the step one is to understand exactly what are your business objectives. And when you start to look at them, they're usually around things like new customer acquisition, profit, retention, and quickly you'll see that actually the marketing KPIs you're working towards are very distant from them a lot of the time, usually doing things like revenue where we know that profit would be better, etc. So if you begin with really setting out what the objectives are, you then need to start building your data infrastructure, a map of what sits where, so that you can start to understand what data do I have at hand that I could use to essentially better align my business KPIs to the marketing I'm doing.
Yeah, you touched on 2 points there that I think are extremely important. One of them is obviously profits and the difference, let's say, of profit and revenue. So how can the businesses that are here leverage the data to uncover those profits versus revenue discrepancies?
Yeah, so this is quite a big sticking point for me actually. When we work with a lot of businesses, what we typically find is that although they might be surfacing profit across the business on maybe a quarterly basis, for example, weekly if you're lucky, none of that data is being surfaced for the people who are actually determining, how much should I be investing against campaign A versus campaign B, or which products are driving new customers, those sorts of things. So a step one for us is to work out where does the profit data actually exist in your business, right? Someone inside your business has a list of here's the cost of every product, every service. And if you're selling services, maybe it's a cost on a monthly or 6 monthly basis, for example. And once we start to stitch all these costs together across your business, things like delivery really stand out as well, where if we were to look at the impact free delivery is having across your business, and we actually calculate it all the way down to each individual product, each individual sale across the business, we start to uncover really interesting insights that should be with your marketing team. Right? They should understand that actually, when I sell this product over here, it's worth 20% more than this product over here. And that's because this one typically has free delivery and the other one doesn't, for instance. Or because the margin of one product is often substantially different to another. So what we do with businesses is we centralize their data into one place and we start to calculate the profit of every transaction going through the business on an hourly basis. And once you start to do that, you can start to do really clever things with it. For instance, pushing it through into GA4, for example. So now your PPC team is auto-bidding directly to profit instead of revenue, and surfacing it into dashboards where every stakeholder in the business that you want to be able to see it can see profit down to an individual SKU level or against a source of traffic, for example, like a campaign. And when you surface this kind of information, what you're going to find is that your marketing teams now don't necessarily need to spend more to actually make more money for the business. They're now properly aligned with your business objectives, which is actually growing that bottom line. So typically when we do these kind of integrations, what we find is we've actually had businesses where they've been tracking negatively year over year down net profit. The revenue's going up, but because their product costs are increasing or their delivery costs are increasing, they're actually flatlining most often than not. And when we start to surface this data, we can actually do things like increasing our investment in marketing, but increasing it in a way so that for every extra pound we spend, we're driving a net profit increase. And that's a really powerful message to take back to the boardroom as well, where we can say, actually, we want to spend this much this month on these particular campaigns, on these particular products, because we understand exactly how much profit we're driving on a daily, hourly basis.
Yeah, I think that is extremely important. Not only because everything needs to be calculated, and from my point of view as well, that is the after kind of the profitability from the company. So that all that math, we need to add the media, we need to add the shipment, we need to add costs of supply chain and deliveries and all of that. So sometimes when in the media side comes the final result, the final revenue sometimes is even smaller than what was predicted. So that is extremely important. You touched on products, but obviously is also important the part of the consumer. So when we talk about, and most of the business nowadays, when we go speak with them and we start working with them or work already, they care about the consumer and the end consumer and what that means for their business. So one of the terms that is like used is the lifetime value, obviously. So what role does the data plays in kind of uncovering this lifetime value?
Yeah, exactly. So if we were to follow this example through, we're going on this journey where we've got these business objectives and we knew that profit was the first one we needed to calculate. And now we've centralized enough data to actually get to the point where we can calculate profit, but we want to take that a step further, and that's really where the CRM data comes in now. So every business has a CRM that's telling them who bought what when. And if we're calculating the profit of every transaction, that means we can also track that along a user's journey over multiple sales. And what we do is we want to get to a point where actually for every single person who's engaged with your business, and they don't actually have to have purchased, we predict their expected lifetime value on whatever time horizon works for your business. And it makes sense to do multiple time horizons. You know, you might have a 6-month, 12-month, 5-year, for example, or whatever works for you. And if you can get to the point where you've actually now essentially scored every individual based on lifetime value, there's a huge amount you can do with that data, whether or not it's segmentation of people into audiences. That's typically what we think of as marketers. We think, I want to put these people into an audience and market to them. But actually, if you're surfacing this data all the way back to your marketing teams again, what they can see is, oh, actually, when people buy this product category, on a lifetime value of 2 years, they go on to be worth more on average. Maybe that's because they don't return the products as much. Maybe it's because typically they're buying a higher quality product, it leads to more loyalty. Whatever it is, we can analyze that data and segment them down to individual people and segment them however we want.
Yeah, you touch on that kind of continuity of the customer, so the no returns or the recency in buying, and all other factors. So a live example of kind of maximizing that long-term value. How can a business, or do you have an example of someone that, or a case for that long-term value?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, a really classic case is businesses that are typically lead gen, although it doesn't have to be, it can be a retailer, where you'll quite often find that a business has put a value, which is, you know, maybe £100 for a lead, for example. And the assumption is that they know that they're going to, if they get enough leads through on average, it'll be worth that. But actually, what you want to do is you want to be challenging the business, saying, well, we've calculated lifetime value and we've worked out what causes it to change. You know, when a business is of this size, or they've got this job role, or their purchase basket is this much value, for instance. And that allows you to go back now and start to challenge the limitations that are put on your marketing team, on the, most importantly, the marketing budget that you've probably got, and say, actually, well, more often than not, you get asked the question of, if you had an extra 100 grand, £1 million, whatever it is, where would you spend it? And if you have this data, you can actually say, well, this is where I would spend it, because it's leading to customers that are more loyal, that are worth more in the long run. And by tracking that all the way through, it's sort of compounding, because now you've got a data set that you can enrich their experience throughout their whole course of purchasing with your brand, right? So every time someone purchases, you can reevaluate, what did we say they were going to be worth? What are they actually worth? And you end up with a view of your entire business where you're saying, this is the predicted value of all my customers today over the next X. This is what they went on to be worth. You need to track actualized versus predicted when you're doing that.
you again you touched on that. So attributing value, attributing value not only to the different places in the journey is extremely important. So going possibly a little bit more technical, how can we attribute value to each one of the interactions that the customer has with the brand and use it obviously for the marketing efforts and the company efforts?
So we call this estimated value modeling, and it's really where we use machine learning to crunch millions and millions of rows of data. And to give you the best example, if you were to picture a car sales room, right? You've got people walking around that showroom, they're looking at different cars, someone's booked a test drive, another person's turned up outside, they're already driving, let's say, Range Rover or whatever, and they walked into a Range Rover car showroom. That salesperson could actually tell you, well, this is the likely value of these different people. This person has that budget. This person I think is wasting my time. They keep coming in, they never purchase. And we as humans are very good at actually saying, well, if you gave me all these behaviors, all these attributes of 3 different people, I could probably tell you who's worth most, right? And that's what we're talking about doing here. We're talking about using machine learning to value every single person every time they engage with us. And what we do is, if you come to the website and you've looked at various products, well, that tells us, okay, then you're interested in those products. And actually, we can find 10,000 other people who followed your exact path. They spent that much time on site. They downloaded this white paper. And actually, because we gated that piece of white paper, you're now in the CRM, so we can continue to track you all the way through 6 months, 12 months later when you actually purchase, for example. So if you're using machine learning, which I guess is a bit of a hot topic at the moment, to build these kind of models, what you end up doing is being able to value every time an engagement with someone changes their value. So if you came onto our website today and we valued you at £50, and then you came back later and you filled in a form and now you're valued 200, we can tell that that engagement that you had there was worth £150. That's the difference in your expected value that changed there. Now, you can build these models to go all the way through the entire user journey, right? Because the user journey doesn't stop at one purchase. Actually, that's really the beginning point with a customer. Their user journey is going to continue to develop with a brand over many, many years. So we run these models daily, and we're valuing every single person who's engaging with a brand every single day and changing their individual values.
Yeah, that's extremely important. And you touched on that the journey does not stop when kind of the purchase is done on the website or in store. It's like afterwards. And the use of this data as well is important for us, and I speak for myself as a marketing team and an e-commerce team, on how we treat the customer afterwards, how we kind of give them the vouchers, the gifts, the codes for discounts, even personalization in the delivery as well, being like part of that. So there is obviously a roadmap attached to a business that wants to take this journey on. My question is probably, where does that roadmap start? And beginning, or going back to the beginning, is not one size fits all. So what are kind of the main things that a business needs to look at to start this journey, and what can be the roadmap?
Sure. I want to also pick up a point that you just made there that was really interesting. That giving existing customers vouchers, for example, might change their behavior, right? That's the value of building these kind of models. You give the vouchers to one lot and not the other, and you can model their difference, right? Coming to today's event, you are now all in a CRM somewhere because you signed up and you turned up, and they could build a model that says this was the value of that event, right? So that's kind of the power of bringing that into that after-sales process there. But to go back to your point of how does a business begin working towards these? Because centralizing your data is not a small thing to do for any business, and it's actually quite scary for a lot of businesses. We talk to a lot of businesses where we showcase them, this is how you could use machine learning to value absolutely everything everyone's doing, and it sort of sounds amazing, and they go, oh, but I've got data that's sat in one country and data set in a different country completely, it's all dispersed. So the thing that every business needs to be doing is they need to be building this data roadmap that says, I know it could take me a year to get to that, but these are the steps I need to do, right? So if I was thinking, I really want to join this offline, online user journey, I'd be thinking, well, how do I get my GA behavioral data, right? What they're looking at on your website, what my marketing team's driving. How do I get that joined up to the after-sales event, right? How do I push that data through? It's all doable. You can surface things, something called the client ID every time someone identifies themselves. The next stage, once you've worked out, okay, well, this is how I joined up my data, it's about saying, okay, then, well, how do I want to, what assumptions in the business do I want to challenge? One might be that a new customer on average is worth £300, say, right? Actually, that we know that instinctively is wrong, because if you split the data one way or another, you'll find some people are worth £100 and others are worth 1,000 if you wait long enough. And if you build these assumptions and you build this roadmap to how you're going to centralize your data, it's sort of just about finding the right people now who can fill in those last bits. The people who have the expertise that maybe your business is missing, or maybe those expertise do sit within the business, but you need to go talk to the right person. It's really common when we talk to businesses, their departments are siloed in such a way that they're all working on the same problem and they don't even always talk to each other about them, particularly when it comes to attribution. And the number one thing when it comes to attribution is that any solution you build has to be believable. So we talked about lifetime value and also the estimated value modeling. We track predicted values versus actualized. And that's so important for any sort of model like this, because otherwise they're magic numbers and you end up with this black box that no one believes and therefore they can't invest against. So you need to make sure that the solutions you're building, you can provably demonstrate that they are a good way to attribute value across your business.
Yeah, that's really significant in obviously this area of e-commerce, because most of the times, as you mentioned, like the teams are siloed, and are siloed in a way that even the sales team that is responsible for some of the channels, let's call it the Amazons of this life, are separate from the D2C team. So getting this value of the customer is sometimes very, very difficult. Okay, we touched on some of the points, like the profit versus revenue, the impact that has, the lifetime value, the roadmap, and how obviously a business can have or implement some sort of these models. Giving you a personal example of how this operates is it can be applied in messaging as an example on the media side. As I mentioned, it can be applied even in what goes inside the box as a gift or as a voucher for the client. If some of you guys have subscription models or have the subscription of the food services that are everywhere, you will receive vouchers depending on how long you are in that subscription within your box, within the box where your food or your ingredients come from. All of that obviously is measured by these models, and is something that we as marketeers can use afterwards to give to our customers and to create more value in the lifetime or the long term of the customer. I think we can now go to a Q&A. If there is any questions in the audience for us, please raise your hands. There is a microphone somewhere that can go around. No? Yep. Yeah, that's fine.
Just about.
The microphone? Yeah, thank you.
Sorry, so you're talking about road mapping, which I guess that's business process sort of tracking and whatnot. What softwares have you used for that, or solution platforms, I guess?
So when we talk about building a roadmap, it's not necessarily about picking a software to build that roadmap. It's about making sure you're aligning all the ambitions of the various stakeholders in the business into one place and saying, this is the order of operations, this is where our data currently sits, and this is how we have to transform it across the business. A key part of that as well is putting a cost of doing so on that roadmap. That's always the number one question is, okay, you've painted this picture over the next year, but how much is it going to cost me? So building it like a business case is what helps sell it internally. It's what makes it go all the way up the chain, essentially.
Yeah, sorry, just to build on that. More often than not, when we enter in a business like as a consultant in the e-commerce area or even in the commerce, like talking about sales in store as well, we find that the tools are sometimes not the correct ones, or the businesses have too many tools to do exactly the same. So this roadmap and start building like, okay, what are the objectives? What are kind of the goals and the timelines will then uncover what we need or not need to actually have in the business. And in the case of David and the data team, obviously the data has tools that then need to translate to the media, to the supply chain and so on. But more often than not, we find that businesses actually have too many tools during the process. Any more? No? If not, feel free. We will be around at the end. Come and grab us if you have questions. Thank you so much. Have a good day.
Thank you.